Where
Yeah.
men, keep it in, all those expressions, boys don't cry and suck it up, and all
Mm.
these things that are really harmful, like they really are ridiculous expressions.
Hello and welcome to Share.care's What is Manly radio show and podcast. Men feel more lonely, lost, and not useful in society than ever in history. Males are not attaching to school, work, or women. What it means to be a man appears lost. Is there a framework for being manly that we can unearth?
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello, Cathy. How are you going?
Good day, Damien.
Thank you. I love that. That's awesome. You're from Canada, eh? We were having a joke before the in the pre-show about being from Canada and Australia, and yeah, I love that. That's so awesome. But it's wonderful, Cathy, being able to reach out to you and speak to someone like yourself in Canada. I mean, we live in such a I find these conversations really important because in today's world, it seems that we're more connected than ever before. And well, not it seems, we are more connected than ever before in history, but people feel more lonely. And I'm wondering if we had more conversations like this rather than just texting on social media, we might feel a little bit more connection. Because even this short conversation we had in the pre-show, I feel really connected, and it's a wonderful feeling. Is that, from
Oh,
you? Yeah.
yeah, I feel the same. I'm just a full disclosure. I don't even have a cell phone, so I'm I'm literally more connected than other people because people are here like it's the
Yeah.
two screen, but I'm like in real time, like connected to people. I think it's essential that we have more of these conversations.
Yeah, I love that. And from my perspective, I do have a mobile phone, but it lives on silent. And to that point, I just got an email from a friend who emailed and said, "I've been trying to ring you for 2 days. You haven't answered." And it's like, because my phone lives on
You okay?
silent, literally. And for the audience, who we have here, we've got Cathy Nesbitt, and she is a health and wellness advocate, and she's also the founder of Cathy's Crawly Composters, Cathy's Sprouters, and Cathy's Laughter Club. And I love that. That's awesome, Cathy's Laughter Club. She's a multi-award-winning environmental innovator, and she uses workshops and inspirational speaking to motivate people to live a more sustainable life, which is something that we're all working towards. Well, I'd say the majority of people are, if not all. She's an avid cyclist and a gardener, and she's on a mission to put worms in every living space. So, Cathy, wonderful to have you on the show. And we were having that discussion in the pre-show. We were talking about, because this is what is manly, and we're looking at, we're trying to find the framework and understand, we'll find a framework for what is manly and understand why it is that men today particularly are feeling more lost, lonely, and not useful in society. And you were mentioning in the pre-show, you've worked with a lot of men. You work in that space of, in a number of different workspaces heavily dominated by men. But what have you seen from that side of things? Are men, feeling more lost and lonely from what you've experienced?
Yeah, it feels like women women are talkers. I mean, going back way back,
Mm.
the hunter gatherers. So men had to be quiet, otherwise they'd
Oh.
scare away the mammoth.
Yeah, I never thought about that. That's an obvious, BFO, blinding flash of the obvious. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So they had so just from prehistoric times, they were raised to be quiet and still and be inward. And women were the the gatherers. So we were, gathering the berries and doing the cooking and the mending and looking after the kids and doing all the home things, but we could be
Mm,
chatting all the while. So
mm,
I often think, that women, if they have a good network of friends and people that they can chat with, we get it out. Like we have a problem, we call a friend, we're like, oh, la la la, this thing. Then it's not as a burden that we're
mm.
sharing ourselves. It's
Yeah.
spread over. So now our burden is split. And
Mm.
and then somebody can look at it from another's perspective and say, oh, how about this? Where
Yeah.
men, keep it in, all those expressions, boys don't cry and suck it up and all
Mm.
these things that are really harmful, like they really are ridiculous expressions.
Yeah, that's fascinating. From that, I said I'm still blown away by that obvious thing that men are the hunters and they had to be quiet. That makes a lot of sense. But I love that conversation that you were talking about, or the conversation component you were talking about, and just being able to share that. Because I remember I reference pop culture a lot, so you get used to that. But I remember Crocodile Dundee, where they were talking about a psychiatrist, and she asked him, don't you have a psychiatrist at Walkabout Creek? How do you get your problems out? And he says, we have a problem. We tell Wally. Wally tells everybody else, no more problem, because it's out in the open. And but that's a point that you've got there. But what do you think it is that today? I mean, even more so, guys are not. When you look at especially younger guys, many of them haven't had a sexual experience, and they're in their 30s, and they've never. What is it with Is it and I don't know that girls have got all that more scary, have they, or or just they don't know how to approach them, or what do you think is missing?
Oh my gosh, this is a big topic. I think that we've been um, dominated by men for so long. The men
Mm,
are the CEOs. They're they run the countries for the most part.
mm,
And so I think that women have been subservient for a very long time and
mm,
just pushed down like the old glass ceiling thing.
mm.
And so I think women have found their voice.
Yeah.
Women are becoming more, standing in their power more. And I
Mm,
and I and I really don't think that it's men and women against. We need everybody. We're all valuable.
yeah.
The
Well, if
masculine, the
men and women don't get
feminine.
together, we don't have a species anymore. So they're pretty
Right.
fundamental.
Oh, it's fascinating. I had the opportunity in 2012 to go to Guatemala with my
Mm,
worms. Not,
yeah.
I didn't take my worms there. For
Come
Let's
on,
go on a
Freddie, come
trip.
on.
So I went to. I didn't want to buy the whole Lonely Planet book for
Mm.
Guatemala, because the South America one, it was 3 pages for Guatemala.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
right.
something's happening here. So whoops, sorry, I'm just getting a message. There we go. So I just went to the bookstore and read the three
Mm.
pages, and the top said that in 1990, was it 93, Guatemala brought in a law prohibiting femicide, and I thought femicide was killing women.
Mm, yeah.
So I was like, wow, but it's killing the female babies.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, how, pardon me, but how dumb
Yeah.
are those men? Like, those women, they bug me so much. Let's just kill the women. Now, then it will have this great country. It'll be so great. So maybe they were killing off they weren't killing women, just the babies,
Yeah.
just the female
That's
babies.
insane.
All right. And then I was like, oh my gosh. Then they probably thought, oh, who's going to do the laundry and who's going to cook my meal and who's going to do all that stuff? And now we don't have any girlfriends.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that would be my thought. Who am I gonna have sex with? That sounds I mean,
So we have maybe these great ideas of we're
I don't know if it's a
bothered by
great idea.
something. See, right? It's it. So I was like, thank God I can go to Guatemala now because they're not killing women anymore.
But I mean, and I'm because I have similar sort of thing. I mean, I have friends who from China, and that's a similar sort of thing where, and now you look at the demographics there, it's insane. That I'd hate to be a guy in China. It's like because there's just no women around. It's
There's
well,
no
I didn't say
women.
no, but it's the disproportion is massive between guys and girls, because there's not that many girls for the same reason.
Mm.
It wasn't, I'm lost by that as to what do you think the fear is? Because women rising, I think, is a wonderful thing. I mean, strong women are sexy in my mind. That's it's like I like it. But what is the fear, do you think?
I think it is a huge fear that, oh, so men have been ruling for so long. Oh, now it's the women's turn. It's not like that at all. Women are more collaborators. We
Mm,
cooperate.
mm,
I do a lot of networking with my business.
yeah.
And in women's networking groups where it's just women, we're all collaborating. We're like, oh, I got this new
Mm,
thing. Oh, try this. And we're we're
mm,
we're just like sharing, here, try this, have this. And we're very open with what we have for
yeah.
the most part.
Yeah.
Where when I network with, when it's men and women, I find men are more guarded. Like they're like, I
Mm,
have this idea, but not yet. I'm not ready to share it yet.
mm,
Because I don't know, what if you take my idea and you do it better? Rather,
mm.
it's that's just from an observation. I just feel like,
I
and not
wonder.
all men and not all women. This is just a
No, I mean, but
generalization.
that's an observation of what you've seen, and I hope the audience is intelligent enough to recognize that that we're talking some generalizations here,
Yeah.
and yes, there are some shades of grey in there, and I think they're intelligent enough to recognize that. Um, and if they're not, they shouldn't be on the show. So, as
But
I,
stay.
well, I don't know. If you're going to write in and whinge and complain, maybe find
Mm.
another show. Um, But from that side of things, though, I wonder about that insecurity that you're talking about, because it's, to me, I'm going, well, is it? I mean, men, have we not, because we haven't dealt with this emotion? Is it because emotions can be pretty powerful? I remember when I was learning to sing, my singing teacher. Don't ask me to sing; I'm not a great singer, but I gave it a go. But my singing teacher said that you'll find as you're doing this, because if you're doing it right, you'll have a deeper connection to your body. You'll start to experience some emotions, and that you might find yourself crying for no reason, or what
Mm.
seems like no reason, and that happened. But
Mm.
I wonder, using that as an analogy, if we've, when I say we, men have been repressing this for so long, when that comes out, is it could it be that it's just so overwhelming that we go, "Oh my god, I can't deal with that," and push it back down again? Do you think that is that a possibility?
Absolutely. The chemical body, my goodness, whenever we are experiencing an emotion, we're secreting chemicals. And then
Mm,
that we come awash in that. Women are used to speaking all the time. We feel
mm,
something, we say it.
mm,
We gotta, if we want to heal, we need to feel it to heal it. That's just
mm.
how it goes. And so it is painful. If you have lived your life suppressing, that's what we do. We stuff and blow, right? Stuff, 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 and then we
Yeah.
explode like a volcano.
Mm,
It's shifting. I do feel like that I'm meeting a lot of younger people. I feel like we're becoming more androgynous.
yeah.
Like we're not so masculine, we're not so feminine. We're becoming kind of a blend. And that might be
Mm.
the chemicals in the water. I don't know.
It could be.
I don't know. It is partly that, by the
Yeah.
way.
Okay. I'll take your word on that one. I haven't done the research there.
Yeah, so it is painful. Like that can happen, you said, with singing. That can happen with laughing as well,
Mm,
because when we're doing that deep diaphragmatic movement, like
mm,
breathing, singing, laughing, we shuffle things up. What happens when we have a trauma? We go, and
mm,
if we don't go, what happens to an animal? So I'll use a rabbit. If a rabbit is chased by a predator and
mm.
escapes,
Yeah,
they hop under a tree or somewhere and they shake. And
yeah,
deers will do the same. I don't know if all animals, but most animals will do this to get
yeah.
the trauma out, like just
Mm.
to get that energy out. Whoo, okay, good. And then they're like, okay, now I'm hungry. Boom, and they go off and eat. We
Yeah.
don't do that. We just are like, and then it stuffs down. It's like, okay, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And then we just like it all again, back to the expressions like be strong, be a man, don't cry, you
Mm.
know, don't throw like a girl, like you throw like a girl, like all these expressions about the genders. I think they have caused us great harm in our society.
Because I said, from my perspective, I do wonder. I've wondered about that because it hasn't been my world, but my world's I think don't. I'm not sure if it's the normal or, but certainly in the area when I had a mum that, you know, I washed dishes when I was a little kid. You know, with me and my sister. My mum used to, you know, people asked her, "Will you get a dishwasher?" And she says, "I got two. I got him and her." I washed dishes. I had to make my bed. When I joined the army, I could make my bed army style already because she was pretty strict on how the bed had to be made. But she involved me in doing the quote unquote woman's work around the house. So I did a lot of that. So I had that experience. And then when I was in the army, I ended up being posted to the SAS, and all those guys there that I was with could, you know, ask for help. They could express emotions, but you had to do that job. You couldn't do that job for long because it was so emotionally intense. You couldn't do it without that. And I realized later that we were all, you know, well, I know we had a psych test beforehand, but I'm guessing that's what they were looking for, or one of the things they were looking for. Because one of the guys on base that I was close friend with, but he was also extremely dangerous. You wouldn't know it looking at him outside of there. His hobby was sewing. He took in my pants. So that's what I was wondering from that perspective. When you look at, you know, people go, you know, you've got to be tough and repress this, but the people that are actually really, really tough seem to be well adjusted in that space. I'm wondering where that got lost. Was it in movies? Was it, you know, because I know people in the TRG, the police tactical response groups. The guys there are all, you know, you wouldn't know that they were tough guys. They can all have, and they've got wonderful relationships with their wives, and they have conversations. And I know from having those talks that they're able to do that. Where do you think we've got lost on this tough guy? Is we can't, because I mean, isn't it? I mean, to not be able to open up to your wife, for example, that's, I'm going to say, cowardly in a way. It's not, it's certainly not
Right.
courageous.
But we do what we're taught. Like we model our parents, that they're our teachers from when we're born. So we see what's happening, how our dad treats our mom, and how the uncles fit in, and the aunts, and how society. So that we're just watching, and we see, you know. So I think it's pop culture. I think it's how we grew up, and we only know what we know. I believe when people want to do, when they evolve, like I'm in this beautiful relationship. My husband he's so gentle and loving and open. He is willing to talk about things, but it took time. It wasn't always that way. He has three brothers, and you know, there was the competition, and but his mom also taught them. Like, she's like, I'm not doing all the work. Right? I'm not your maid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fascinating. This is a really wonderful conversation. I think this is a great podcast, because I think there is there's a big movement, and I think that we are coming together. There's kind of fractions on the other side. Like, there's the holdouts are like, the old days. Why don't we go back? Women wrecked it for themselves. And on the other side, Damien, I've heard women say, I was doing a TV interview, and one of the other guests was teaching younger people how to cook. She was my age, and I said, wow, it's really needed, because people don't know how to cook today. And then this young woman, I guess I would say in her 30s, she said it wasn't accusatory, but she said it was you women, you ladies, 50s and 60s, that wrecked it for us. You were like, we could do it all. We can have the kids. We can run the house. We can do everything. So you didn't take time to teach us how to cook and how to do the things. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's always the woman's fault. Why is it always our fault?
Well,
you know, so it's
that's
just
a good point.
I had never
and again,
heard that perspective.
Yeah, no, well, I haven't, and I look at it from my son. I've got a 14-year-old son, but all the way through his school, they have a thing where they have dads and sons come in and to have a cooking experience, so they can cook for the mums. That's what they do in the
Wow.
school, you know. It's and a lot of them. And my son can, well, kind of cook. But he has. There was times where it's like, here, you're cooking dinner, and he would cook dinner, and I just talk him through
Mm.
it, and he did that. But I mean, the school had that as well. So, but I'm fascinated by that whole blame thing. It's like, well, I can't cook; it's your fault, rather than, well, get out a cookbook. It's like,
Right? Go to YouTube. I was blown away, but that seems to be the type of society that we're in. It's like it's always somebody else. You can always point at
mm,
someone else, then we don't have to do anything. We don't need to change if we can say, "Oh, it's not my
that
fault
doesn't
that I'm
make your
like
life
this."
any better either, though.
Right? Oh, when we take control, that's it. When we
Yeah.
can take control, we have so much power. And if only people would understand that by stopping the blame game and going, oh, wait a minute, maybe I did that.
Mm.
I think it's really there's so many factors that are happening in our world today. And we've got climate change, we've got economy, we've got war, we've got so many things going on.
Mm.
And I kind of joke because otherwise you'd be crying in the corner.
I love that. Well, that's the laughter club, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I kind of think that we need to come to a point where we're always looking to improve, just to make it better,
Mm.
helping other people rather than like being guarded. Like,
Mm.
like if we're open and sharing, that's how we're going to survive this crisis that we're in, because we don't need to do everything. If we've got, so there's a movement now called transition towns, and it's
Okay.
where like a town would have everything they need.
Mm.
They have a candlestick maker and a soap maker, and they have a
Mm.
butcher, and they have a cheese maker. So everything is there. You don't need to know everything. You would
Mm.
just go and share what you've got. Or you have a garden and you grow tomatoes, and somebody else grows lettuce, and someone else
Mm.
grows cukes. So then you've got your salad.
Mm. Very fresh
Right?
too.
Just sharing right?
Yeah.
I think our society has grown up where we, rather than being community, we're insulated. We move
Yeah.
away, right? We have our own house, but we don't have our grandparents and our, you know, everybody living in the same house anymore.
Mm.
They might not even be in the same country anymore.
'Cause I always found that interesting. I mean, and maybe because I grew up in a small country town and I had that philosophy, but wherever I've lived, I've got to know the neighbors. I've gone and said hello and chatted to them. And where I'm here, I do these recordings down here at the beach house. I know the neighbors next door. I know the neighbors that side. I know the neighbors across the road. I know another neighbor across, the street. And we always say g'day and g'day. And
But
but what do you think has stopped us from having those conversations by chatting with people?
I think it's fear. I think
Mm.
society has created this system where we're pitted against each other. They're like coming from a scarcity mentality rather than abundance. We're
Well,
coming from lack.
I'm fascinated by that because, I mean, I get it. We go back before the Industrial Revolution. If you wanted, anything, if you wanted to be better off, someone had to be worse off. That you had to plunder to get that. That's just the way it worked. But since the Industrial Revolution, innovation has created a bigger pie. So the more we innovate, the more we solve problems that we have, which then enables more people to have more things, and whether things you want more things or not is different up to you. But we
Mm.
were able to solve problems that we didn't have. I mean, things like polio, and solving those problems. So we're making the world a better place through innovation, but it's making the pie bigger as well, so we can all have more. Um, and I wonder, have we just not caught up to understanding that it actually is in your own interest to help other people? You might help someone. We look at, for example, cancer research. There's only a couple of centers in the world, but if we encourage development in other areas, all of a sudden there's more people that have the capacity to become a doctor, and we might, that person might go on and become the person that finds a solution to cancer and saves your child. It's
Yeah, it's really strange. I think it's a few, well, it's definitely a few things that have gone on. It's the competition, like,
mm.
you know, us versus them kind of thing. The scarcity,
Well,
not
is
having
that? I mean,
enough.
let's with the competition side of things. I mean, is it a competition where we've got a good competition and a negative competition? I think the scarcity component linking them together is that where we go, okay, that's a bad, that's not a good competition. But if you have competition where you go, okay, I'm working, we've got, and I do this with friends of mine where we will be competing against each other, but we're inspiring each other to be better. So,
Mm.
wow, and you learn from that and go, okay, next time I'm going to be better. I do that with, games and that we play with our friends. We go, oh, I got beaten there. How can I be a little bit better next time? Is that competition the kind of competition we need? Whereas competition where we're taking from another person and treating it as a loss, is that a different mindset that we need to be aware of?
Absolutely, yes. I'd like to go back to the office. I worked in an office and
Mm.
women were brutal against each other. Like, it's like we
Mm.
were vying for the same man,
Yeah.
like, oh, get a man, marry big and whatever, like marry rich and whatever. And I don't even like, and that's from fairy tales. If you look at any Disney movies, the women
Mm.
are always subservient. And I mean, they're
Mm.
coming out with new ones now, but the old ones are all
Mm.
about the woman being subservient, and she's always pretty and has the
Mm.
little body, but once she loses, and even as we age, it's like men age gracefully and women just become old haggard witches.
I don't know. I thought Helen Mirren was pretty sexy. Had a thing for
Right,
her.
but you're a different breed, Damien, and I hope that more men are coming up, and they absolutely are, because when I go to retreats and different things that are often women dominated,
Mm.
there are definitely more and more men showing up in those spaces, and it's so welcoming. We just are so grateful for the balance. We need the estrogen and the testosterone to balance. We are one. When we come
Mm.
together, we can do so much great work.
Well, it's
Um,
fascinating that you say that because, again, I mentioned my mum before, and that was something I grew up with, was she always said, men and women are different. They both have strengths, but by coming together, you become more than the sum of
right.
the parts.
Absolutely. I absolutely. Yes. Yeah, it's just there's so many problems with um how
Why
we've
has the
created our
polarization
society.
happened? Why do you think the polarization has happened?
That's I think it goes back to the scarcity mentality. Like the
Mm.
polarization is like, so it's the sexes, women
Mm.
against men, and then women against women, because you need to get the good man back to the
Mm.
back to the marrying properly. It's like, what if you don't even want to get married?
That
Like,
component, yeah.
and that too. When you get married, as soon as you get married, it's like, well, when are you going to have kids? As if it's an automatic thing. And I really thought that was my lot in life.
Mm.
I met my husband in driving school when I was 16, he was 17, like
Yeah.
Sound of Music.
Oh, cool.
And then we dated for 9 years and got married. We've been married for 35 years.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, wow, thank you.
Congratulations. Yeah. Love
Yeah, and we still like each other. That's good. Um,
that. Well, that's a good. I'm sure you liked each other at the start, which is a good thing to be.
right? You got to like each other at the start. I can't even remember why I went down that path now.
Well, I mean, but when we're talking about this, this men and women coming together, we have differences. And I mean, I do that. I have a program that I work with large corporates. It's a negotiation program. And one of the things that I teach in there is a combination of that. The best negotiators come from a combination of what would be traditionally men and of masculine and feminine traits. There's the empathy side of things where you're listening, you're understanding, and you use that in the probing phase where you're gathering information. So you're actually open to that. So you're asking questions. Silence is, that's probably more a masculine trait, but having that ability to actually sit quietly and listen to what's going on, not just listen with your ears, but listen with your whole body. And you can
Mm.
actually sense things that are going on. So that's very much a feminine trait. But then there's also the assertiveness to say when someone's pushing back and you're holding your ground and saying, hey, no, actually this is what we're doing. So a combination of those two traits makes the best negotiators, because they can do both. And that's where I said, from that perspective, I was lucky to have the mum that I had.
Mm.
To say that. I mean, there was other things maybe I wasn't so lucky with, but you get a combination of both, and you got to work through that. But is it, from that perspective, when you're looking at you, because we were talking about that relationship, when you talked about your husband and that he'd opened up a lot during that relationship, what do you think it was that helped that happen? Helped him open up? Was it just being around you, or kind of role modeling in a way?
I think so. I learned early on that to be responsible for my actions.
Mm.
I was an incredible. Everyone is a manifester. Whatever you have, you manifested it. But I was a great manifester for what I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted to live in France to learn French, and so I made that happen early on.
Love that. Awesome.
Yeah,
Beautiful place.
and so I thought my
Whereabouts
role
in
was.
France?
I lived in Arles.
Ah.
Even though whenever I took a train, they couldn't understand when I said Arles. They were like, "Where? Ooh," and I'm like, "Arles, Arles," and they're like, "Ooh, Arles," and I'm like, "That's what I said."
It's a wonderful place. I mean, I've been to France myself, and it is a beautiful place. I love it. So,
Oh, I loved it. It was a great experience.
yeah.
Except when I came back to Canada, I couldn't. The Quebec French is very different than the French French. So I'm like, oh, so still I can't speak French.
I love it. Yeah. Um,
um,
yes.
yeah, so I thought my role in life was, get really literally I thought this was what my path was. Get
Mm,
married, have babies, and there you go. That was what my role was.
mm.
So when I was 27, we traveled in Africa and Asia for 13 months.
Wow.
And it was like, okay, I really want to do this thing, and then I'll get on with my life. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds ridiculous saying it out loud now. It's like, oh my gosh, how brainwashed was I? I didn't even want children. I don't even like babies. And not that I don't like children. It's not that I want to, it's just that I was afraid of babies. When I worked in the office and people would come in from mat leave and they'd have their baby, oh, everyone cooing and cawing. It's like, do you want to hold my baby? It's like, I don't. I didn't have that part. I really loved children, but
Yeah.
not babies would scare me. Anyway, so I thought that was my role. So 27, we go traveling Africa and Asia, 13 months. It was amazing.
Mm.
Going to all those, I mean, I'm from Canada. We have very few people compared to our landmass,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I'm from
But it's
Australia.
cool too,
Relate. So,
right? So
yeah.
going to India, going to China, going to
Mm,
Hong Kong, going to
mm.
Indonesia, I was just like, oh my gosh, there's so many people.
Yeah.
And, at 27, I was pretty impressionable
Mm.
and pretty naive. I thought I was going to go and learn about all the people, like, well, spending a day in each place. You meet the people that want to meet you, by the way.
Yeah.
The people that want to practice their English and then take things from you. Okay. Um, I mean, during that trip, I learned that, and I don't know if it's true, but that people would sell their girls to prostitution so that they
Mm,
could make money, and then they're disowned. Then
mm,
they're dirty.
yeah.
They're ruined. They can't come back after they've been prostitutes.
Mm,
I learned or heard that people would maim their children so they could make more money begging. And my heart
mm,
was hurting, Damien. I was just like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, we have so many people in the world. I don't need to make another person. And I
Mm,
didn't even like babies. So I was like, I was really conflicted because I thought, this is my role.
mm,
How can I do something that I don't want to do?
yeah.
And so I decided during that trip, and it caused a bit of problem with my husband and I, because
Mm.
we never talked about having kids or not.
Yeah, I was
It was
wondering about
assumed,
that. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So then made a decision, an unconscious decision at that time, that I would be a big sister, or I would do something to
Mm,
help somebody, or adopt, like do something else rather than bring another person into the world because we didn't need more people is what I really, it just became ingrained. And I decided we're not having kids. I decided that. And it did cause a little conflict later because he thought we were having kids because that's what you do. And his mom really would have been a wonderful grandmother. And so I thought for my beautiful mother-in-law, I would have children because that's what my role was. It's so we're kind of brainwashed. So what is the issue? There's so many. It's really in our DNA. It's going to take a while to unravel all of this. But by having conversations like this, it's helping. I think somebody will hear this and go, oh, good. I don't have to have children. I don't have to go down that path necessarily. Cathy's still happily married.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point that you're saying because it is, and it's come up a lot with, now in society, and it's wonderful the world that we live in because we do have so much choice. You pretty much, well, certainly in the countries that we live in, and a lot of countries of the world, you've pretty much got freedom to do whatever you want to do. Is it, from that perspective, and particularly, so again from what you've looked at with your husband and other guys you've been around, is it a case where we've got all this freedom, but we haven't really been taught how to make a decision?
Freedom without structure.
Yeah.
That's amazing because when I was growing up, I grew up in the 60s. And the message I received, I don't know if it's true, but the message I received was that women could be, we had 5 choices. We could be secretary, nurse, stewardess, waitress, stay-at-home mom, no teacher. I can't remember. There was 5. So I chose secretarial. And because the choice was limited, it was kind of easy. Like, it's like, oh, it's a limited choice. Okay, well, I'll do that. It was easy. Now with so many choice and no structure, it's like you could do anything. Whatever you want to do, you can do it. It's like if there's too many chocolate bars to choose, I don't know which one to choose. I can't. I'm like, I like, right. So I think that having all this choice is wonderful, but we need some guidelines of how to navigate. I really believe that people want structure. And children need discipline, but people today are kind of like, they give them a cell phone and then they're like, oh, well, now I can track you, but, just go and be good.
I mean, that component as well. I mean, as a dad, I find, from that perspective, that structure is, and maybe it's because I had a lot of structure as a kid and then I was in the army, so that adds more structure to it. But same token too, is it a case of, it's giving them the ability to choose what it is for them? I had that discussion with my son. It's, when he was going to school, and I said, what grades do you want to get? And he picked a grade that was, high, and I'm thinking it should be higher, but I didn't say anything. But he structures his time and so that he gets that. Well, he gets better than that grade now. But is it, from that perspective, it's having the ability to let go and actually allow the person to be their own person rather than. Is that a security thing, do you think, where we want them to be like us, not just children, but the people around us? Because you have people like that. You come across them and you say, well, why? They ask you why you're doing that, and you've got to justify it to them. You don't have to, but they're expecting you to justify to them to their satisfaction as to why it's okay.
Well, that's another part, Damien, is we're always comparing. We're always looking like, and social media has exacerbated that. And it's all about emotion. When we're on social, we see something that causes us distress. We may not even know that person, but we get all, we're going to compose a response. And I say to people, stop that. Like, why engage with something? Like, who cares if they don't have the same opinion, if you know them or not, or they're just Facebook friends?
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
I had an interesting discussion yesterday with I've got another podcast called Growing Revenue and Profit, which is about, business and succeeding business. And there was a young kid, he literally he's half my age. at least. But we were talking about that, and he was talking about the social media side of things because his business is in that. So he started that business, and from what I can tell, is quite successful in it. But he was talking about a lot of people are chasing all these likes, and it really doesn't mean anything. You don't need a lot of likes. You need the right likes. Was what he
Mm.
was talking, and I was listening to this, what I thought was a young kid with just this wisdom going, he's not, it's not about having everybody like you. It's being associating with the right people that are going to help you get where you want to go. I mean, is that, what is this need to be liked? Is that linking back to insecurity, or is it?
Yes, and when we get those likes, we get a dopamine hit.
Yeah.
So it's the hit. It's like it's that chemical. That's why people drink or do drugs or eat or sex or whatever their addictions are, to get
Mm,
that chemical reaction. And
yeah.
that's what social does. When we're on there, we do a post and then we get all those, and we're ping, 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 and we're like, oh, look at everyone's liking what I'm doing. Oh, this is really great. And even if we're not saying it, it's just like it's like pew, 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 we get the hit. We just need to stop comparing. I say to people, like, on social, somebody might have, they got a new boat, and it's like, oh, look at their boat. Wow. Oh my gosh, I want a boat. I don't even like the water, but I want a boat now.
But is it from, because I love that you went to dopamine, because that's a really important point. Because you don't have to do anything to get that. All you have to do is think a happy thought.
Mm,
And so you don't have to get a like from someone else. You just have to say, I like myself, and you'll get a dopamine hit. I just felt it
that's the
now as I did.
challenge.
Oh.
That's the challenge. People are self-loathing.
Ooh,
That's the challenge, Damien. You just hit it on the head. They don't love themselves. They
why?
don't love themselves
Well,
because
well, why is
society
not the
has
right
set us
question?
up.
What's stopping them from doing that? I have a quote, and it says, and I made it up, which is, I'm pretty quite proud of that. But it's, now I've forgotten it. I said, unlike real walls, barriers in your mind only exist because you choose them to be there. And it's
Yes.
like, from that perspective, this self-loathing. I mean, if you're low, what is it? Why are we so hard on ourselves? What is the reason for that?
Big question. I think well, we have ancestral things, traumas that are in our body. We don't even know. I'm just learning a little bit about ancestral trauma and clearing that. Yeah. And then what people say, like, again, we only can operate from what we know. So if, say, our
Mm,
parents were abused, then they abuse because that's
yeah.
all they knew. They know that's, you yell at your kids because that's what you do, or you know, hit them because that's what your parents did to make you, you know, behave a
Mm,
certain way. It's really, this is a really heavy conversation because it's bigger than, we can't just solve it here. Like, just tell someone, oh, smarten up, because it's bigger than
can't
that.
we though?
It's
I mean, and I'm putting that from that question because I think that's the journey that I had. I spent all this time trying to work it out, and then it was finally, I just said smarten up, and I did. And I had that conversation with my dad as well.
mm,
Similar sort of thing where my dad was being self-loathing, and I was being selfish. I got sick of listening to him, so I wrote him a letter, and I said, "Get your crap together." Along those lines, here's a couple of books to read. Go and read them. I think Think and Grow Rich was in there, and a couple of those. I was on the other
mm.
side of the country, so it was easy to write him a letter. And this was before, mobile phones. I'm older than I look. Um, and it was fascinating from that perspective because we had that conversation later, and I tell him, who's a prick for doing this. But well, I was going through a tough time, and my dad was support. I asked him for help, which was difficult, but difficult and kind of, anyway, I asked him for help, and he helped, which was great. And I was in a suit going to the city, and I just thought I'd write him a note, a message saying, "Look, I really appreciate all the help that you gave me through this tough time." And I facetiously, but kind of not so facetiously, the bastard wrote back to me and said, no, I have to thank you for that letter you wrote to me because you changed my life. So there I
Mm.
am in a suit on the train, bawling my eyes out because my dad's written
Wow.
to me. But from that perspective, I know from my journey, I spent a lot of time going through it. But when actually it was literally me going, hey, I need to accept responsibility and just smarten up. And when I did that, it changed. It was when
But
I
that
went,
was you. That
yeah,
was
no,
you
no, so not
saying,
everyone's the same, but I'm just wondering,
yeah.
it's like, but before I actually made that choice to say, hey, smarten up, I struggled and rejected it and was putting the blame out there and kept going through, creating what I now believe creating my own trauma,
Mm.
or reliving past trauma rather than just going, hey, because that's what I mentioned before. I mean, my parents had some good things. They had some really crappy things too. I could drag that
Hmm.
around forever. I can't remember a lot of it now because I can't be bothered. I like to focus on the good
Right.
things. Is it, and that's where I wonder, is it that simple where we go, hey, I'm just going to focus on, that's where gratitude comes in, doesn't it? We focus on what we
Mm.
have.
Yes, it starts with gratitude. Absolutely.
Mm.
So it is our personal responsibility, but until we understand that, until we
Mm.
until we realize, oh, this is on me, and
Yeah.
we all have people in our life that are not responsible. They're like blaming the system. They're like, oh no, I don't have a job because of that. I didn't
Mm.
finish school because I wasn't smart enough, or the things that we
They
tell
told me I was
ourselves.
stupid,
And those are from childhood as well, like that the parent might say
Mm.
something like that. Like I was shushed as a child, and I'm so grateful now. I'm like, if I wasn't shut up as a child because I'm Chatty Cathy, why did they call me Cathy if they didn't and give me a Chatty Cathy doll?
I love that. That's awesome.
She was my mentor
Yeah.
until my brother cut the string. So, the message that I got was kids are meant to be seen and not heard.
Mm.
And, at our dinner table, it was quiet. We didn't talk about politics. We didn't talk at the dinner table. It was like, this is a time for eating.
Mm.
So where there was no connection going on. It was very kind of I would say maybe a cold household.
Mm.
And I was quiet, it was like, be quiet. I would wake up. I remember waking up and singing in the morning.
Mm.
I'd wake up doop, 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 before my eyes are open. I'm like, doop, 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 doop,
I love
chip, chip,
that.
chip, like the little bird.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that wasn't cool in my house. So then I became inward. I went in and
Okay.
I became depressed. And I
Oh.
was just a sad little child, um, because I wasn't allowed to express myself. And
Mm.
now I'm not blaming anyone. Now I'm grateful. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God my parents shut me up because now I wouldn't have anything to say. That's not true. That's not true. But I think that formed the person that I became. I could have stayed in that
Mm.
depressed state. I could have just,
Yeah.
did the behaviors that are not serving. Um, yeah, instead I took responsibility. I've done a lot of work. My husband and I, that's why we're still together, is we've done a lot of demon dogging, like going to those,
Mm.
retreats where you're climbing poles and trusting people and, falling back and hope that people catch you and all those
Yeah.
things that seem so random, but they really are beneficial because they build your trust in yourself.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point, the trust in yourself. And that's because that's what I wonder about that. I mean, I was fortunate, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from a mentor I had. He was the CEO or, sorry, managing director and, chairman of BP. And he taught me to fish because whenever I asked for advice, I'd never get a response for a few days. So he's making me think about it first. But one day I was really stressing about something and I said, I'm worried, why can we, but he responded straight away. And he said, Damien, I think you should back yourself that you'll make the right decision in the moment. And it was
Mm,
like, and that's where when we're talking about this self-loathing and I wonder about that. And yes, I know we learn as role models, we pick that up. But I'm just wondering from that perspective, what is it that, when we look at it and we go, because inside, I think we're a ball of light. We're this
mm,
amazing, absolutely amazing being. Um,
yeah.
so it's, yeah, we know, I think we intuitively we know that we are. I'm just wondering why, and is it something, to do with, I've got on share.care, we have their first principle is take responsibility for yourself. And we've got a quote from Sophocles, which is, it's a painful thing to look at your own trouble and know that you yourself and no one else has caused it. And we were talking about blame before and blaming others, because if we take it on as ourselves that we've caused it, that's kind of a huge responsibility, especially if we've
Mm,
spent, 30 or 40 years living a crap life and then go, hang on a minute, it's no one else's fault but mine. You go, well, I've just spent 40 years when I didn't have to.
right.
Do you think that might be part of that?
Yeah, I do. I think, it's multifaceted because so our brain, the role of our brain is to keep
Mm.
us safe and conserve energy.
Mm.
So when we just like if you go to a family dinner and maybe it's not a harmonic family or whatever, and your sibling or somebody says something that triggers you,
Mm.
and then boom, you're in it. So there's movies about this, about how the family dynamics and people are drinking, and then
Yeah.
it's always
Everyone
chaos and ends in a
experienced that at some point.
so and it's because the brain knows what to do. Our conscious is, I don't, something like we're aware of 10%, and then we're really driven by our
Mm.
subconscious or
Yeah.
unconscious, whatever you want to call it. And so I think what happens is the situations are familiar, so we just get into the same pattern. I
Mm.
unless we do work, unless we're like, I'm sick of feeling this
Yeah.
way. I need to change something. I need to change something.
Mm.
Until we realize that we're able to, again, if with our surrounding,
Mm.
I don't know who it is, but somebody says, you know, you're going to be like the five people that you spend time with or whatever this,
Mm.
you're going to have the financial income of the people that you hang with. You're
Yeah.
going to live the same lifestyle as the people that you hang out with.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think it's multifaceted. Yes, we need to take responsibility, but we need to know that that's a possibility. Because
Mm.
if no one around us is taking responsibility and everyone's saying, it's the
Yeah.
system and the government and, oh, that guy over there and the neighbor, he's the one, then we
That's
don't
the
have to
interesting
do
part about
anything.
how the mind works, because when you look at your reticular activating system, it'll filter what you want to believe. So you almost becomes, you actually block out what you don't want to see. So
Mm,
you reinforce, it becomes a reinforcing, and you might have, you know, I don't like using positive and negative because I don't think they exist.
no.
But most people relate to that. So I'll use it for that example. Is you have a negative experience, or and then because your belief system is set that way, your reticular activating system will filter out information that doesn't support it. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Is that, part of that process, that our brains are wired that way to reinforce what we want to reinforce?
Well, and it's the conserving the energy. Like,
Ah,
no need to think of something new. I know what to do here. So it's like the old record.
yeah,
It's in that groove. So we need to just
yeah.
move the needle. We need to literally do something different, or we'll get the same result again.
Because I wonder from that perspective, a friend of mine, who's a business partner, she said to me, and I found it really profound, was she said, we learn through pain until we learn to learn through joy.
Oh my gosh. I love
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
love that. Oh, that's so great. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing. I do think that we are geared for negative. Our brain is wired for
Mm,
negative. That's why the news is so successful,
yeah.
because we watch the news, we're like, oh, and that just reinforces again, like,
Mm.
oh, it is, we are kind of doomed. Look at there it is. I can see it.
Yeah.
Right. And what we focus on, that's what we see.
Mm.
Um, wow, yeah, that's
Well,
fascinating. And I
because
think,
go ahead.
yeah, I think, whenever we're going to grow, at least for personally, whenever I've come to a point in my life where something is changing,
Mm.
um, there's often some friction, where
Mm.
I feel like frustrated, and it's uncertain. I don't know what's
Yeah.
happening. And I could easily just retreat and go, no,
Yeah.
I'm staying in my box. That I don't,
Yeah.
no, I'm not ready for that. But what I say to people now is when you step through that, if you're able to work through that friction, that
Mm,
frustration, that wall that's there that's keeping you in, if you can burst through that, that's where the magic is. The joy is on the other side of that
yeah.
angst that you're feeling. I think it's the universe saying, are you sure?
Well, I mean, that's where I wonder about that because, and I love that analogy, and that's where I link that to what my friend Jenny said. Learning through pain, and is it because you get to a point where you're hitting the wall so many times, doing the same thing over and again, that it gets so painful that then you start because you get to a point where it's so painful, you waken up, and then when you truly waken up, it becomes that you've got an objective or an intention, if you want to put it that way, a goal. And now you're moving towards that goal, and you're recognizing, as you said, that you're not getting there. So you're going, okay, I need to do something different. And and I wonder from that perspective, where did we learn that? Because when you look at a young baby that's learning to walk, the young baby doesn't fall on its butt and goes, that hurts, I'm never getting up again.
Yeah.
So how do we lose that ability to do that? Because we've all done it. We all learnt to walk. Well, I'm sure some people
Yeah.
didn't, but I'm pretty sure most people have learnt to walk.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
was and I wonder, I mean, I don't know who does these studies, but somebody did. They studied how many times a baby tries and fails to walk, and on average, it was 8,000 times.
Wow. Wow. Imagine.
8,000. Yeah. And
Wow.
just kept getting up and giving it another go. So we've all
Because they
done
don't
it.
have the filter. I think that like babies
Yeah.
don't have the filter, right? They're dependent on us. They're just kind of exploring. They've got that like new mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think again, society, our families squish us down like, oh, don't be ridiculous. I say to people when you get that inspired thought, like that idea,
Mm.
and you're like, oh my gosh, and your
Mm.
heart's pumping, and you're just like, well, it's always pumping, but it's pumping
Yeah.
more. Yeah, you're just like so you're alive. You just feel like, oh, that's such a great idea for
Mm.
business or something you want to do. And then what happens is if you don't take action right away, either by
Mm.
writing it down or something, you get
Mm.
in your head and you're like, oh, I remember last time that happened. I don't have time right now for that. So you shelve it. Or you
Mm.
talk to somebody and they're like, oh, yeah, I remember last time. Yeah, that didn't
Yeah.
work. And you're like, oh, yeah, last time I looked ridiculous. Oh, yeah, I don't want to do that again. I don't, right? We don't want to look
Well,
bad. We don't
but
want,
where is that from, that looking bad? I mean, and I get it because I've done it. Um, and it's, and I use the analogy because this is a real example. We've all walked down the street. Well, I think most people have. I used, but we've walked down the street, tripped, got really embarrassed. Um, and then if we really look, no one's really noticed anyway. But what I did one day, I don't know how I set it up, but I said I was going to have a shift. I wasn't going to be embarrassed, and I tripped badly. But I got up and I went, yeah, and everyone clapped, and it was like, and it was a completely different um, a response and a different aspect from my side of things, and it was a conscious choice. I said, I'm just not going to. I felt embarrassed at the time, but I just went, no, I'm going to celebrate.
mm,
And I made a thing out of it, and people literally clapped and thought it was cool. So and I just wonder, where do we get this thing where we get embarrassed by what other people think? And again, I don't you can love you get to an age where you quote your parents and you realize the wisdom in there. As a kid, I used to hate my mum wearing these beanies because beanies weren't cool back then. They're cool now, but they weren't then. And she'd always say, "It doesn't matter what other people think." Um,
mm.
and I hated it as a kid, but it must have stuck.
What a
Um,
wise woman.
I said there's a lot of good, there's not some good stuff, but there's a lot of good stuff there, and it's like, well, but is that where do we get this from? Where we get so worried about what other people think when we're talking about, for both the men and women listening, and the people that are shirking away and worried about getting out in society because they're worried what other people think. Where do we get that from, and how can we get rid of it?
How do we get rid of it? Well, taking responsibility, standing in our power, doing the work.
Yeah.
Like really, really, it's self-development, self improvement, just always working on self. We're never there. It's a journey where, I think people want to feel good right away. They're looking for the magic bullet, like, oh, I've been tired for so long. I don't even know what it feels like to have energy. So go for a walk. Okay, now go for another walk. It's not like one time. It's like with laughter, laughter's the best medicine. Everybody's heard that. But then they're like, why do I need to laugh? Well, because laughter's the best medicine.
Well, it is. Well, we know that. We know it actually, you use a lot less muscles to smile than you do to frown. So it's
right.
less energy intensive. And it
Yes.
makes you feel better. It produces dopamine when you frown. I don't know what the other negative chemicals are.
Cortisol and adrenaline.
I didn't want to know because now I know what that.
Well, it's not like you weren't secreting them before.
But from that perspective, I mean, we know this, so we consciously know it, but we don't do it. I mean, I'd make the joke too. If you grab a pen and you put it between your teeth, don't let your lips touch the pen. You can't not smile. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So if we want to,
and as soon as we smile, we start secreting the love drugs. So it's again, back to our brain being wired for negative. So that was, the amygdala hasn't evolved since prehistoric times. And at that time, it was great. It kept us alive. We needed to know if we were in danger, we needed to know. Now, when we go into stress, like always, like every day, our amygdala thinks that we're in imminent danger. Like if you lose your phone, glasses, keys, it's a nuisance. Or you miss the bus. Oh, how annoying. Right? But it's not the end of the world. We're not going to die. Probably not. But our body acts as if.
Well, that's what I wonder. Do we need to be, is it an evolution thing where we need to, we've heard, most people have heard of the movie X-Men, if not seen it, where it's like there's this evolution. Do we need to have, is that the evolution we need to have, is go, hey, we're not going to die. We're now in a society where, the chances of that happening are very slim. And certainly in most situations, that's not going to happen. We just need to have that evolution and going, hey, I'm not going to die by giving it a go. I just need to give it a go.
Yeah. Yeah, we at this time, we really need more leaders. We need more people showing the way rather than followers. I think right now we have too many people following.
Well, is that a case? I wonder about that, and I'd like to pick on our politicians. Because when we have a look at, and you're safe because you're in Canada, you're not in America, but I highlight, the last presidential election debate in America. And, and this is where, and I don't like debates because to me they're two narcissists beating each other over the head with an opinion. No one's listening. And that was the great example. If that was an example of that, nothing, it was an amazing example of that. Is it a case too where we need to actually start, not only listening to others, but listen to ourselves, our own self-talk, and going, what am I saying to myself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know you know this, but whenever we say I am, and then whatever follows, our mind thinks that must be true.
Yeah.
So if we say I'm dumb, cancel, I'm not, I'm really smart. Our body takes it on.
Yeah.
Our body takes it on and says, okay, you are. That's right, you are. Yeah, I'm always late. Okay, you are. And then things happen, so you're always late.
Yeah.
If affirmations are overlooked, I think that they're very powerful. If we wake up in the morning and before we get out of bed, think about, I'm awesome, I'm loving, I'm lovable, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I'm wise, all is well. If we wake up with those chemicals creating through our body, then it's like, yeah, because we're still in that, I don't know which brain wave it is, but we're just in waking up. So our brain is very receptive to whatever we're thinking. What happens to most people, the alarm goes off, they snooze a few times, which don't do that, people, just get up. And then they start ruminating about the horrible things that is going to happen. Oh, the boss, I got to have that meeting, or, oh, I hate my coworker, or the commute. That we start ruminating all the things that are wrong in our life. So we're
Mm.
secreting the stress chemicals before we even step out of bed. And then we
No
stub
wonder
our
people
toe,
don't
and
want
then
to
we're
get out
really
of
mad.
bed.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we can flip that around, and we can, it's overriding our brain. It really is
Mm.
overriding that 10%, getting into our
Mm.
body. What do we want? Listen
Mm.
to really, and going in, we've really discounted our intuition.
Yeah.
We're all intuitive. We're
Yeah.
all intuitive, but we think it's indigestion or like, oh, what's that feeling? Oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. We've all had those experiences, I think, where we go to do something. We get
Mm.
that feeling like this probably isn't what I should be doing, but
Yeah.
we barrel ahead anyway. And then things happen. Like, then it's like, oh, it didn't work out the way we thought. Oh, wait a minute. If I look back, I did get a message.
Well, that's the
I
question
did.
I'm asking about listening. Is it, I mean, because when we're listening, it's having that sensitivity and an awareness of yourself. I know, I mean, from my experience, I have that a lot. I mean, one of my hats I wear is I run a private equity fund, and often I've got to choose between two stocks. On paper, they're
Mm,
exactly the same, but it's a gut feeling to go with one or the other. And more often than not, I'm right. It's I
mm.
picked the better performing stock, but it's a state to be in. Is that where we need some of, when we're listening, we need to take that time to actually have a space where we can actually learn how to listen to ourselves.
Yes. Yes, because we have all the answers. We have all the answers for us.
Yeah.
We really do. And when we,
Oh, I love that.
right,
Yeah.
we do have all the answers for us if we take time and, you know, go quiet for a moment, maybe meditate or do a couple of deep breaths. It's really not that
Mm,
difficult. It, it's just not practice.
mm,
It's not something that's encouraged. It's like, get up and go and work hard
mm.
and whatever. It's not, I don't hear many people talking about playing hard, but we're always working, work, work, work. There's no time to play. Oh no, I don't have time for that. I got to work.
Oh, I
So,
love that.
and we're very left brain now. Our right
Mm,
brain has really atrophied because we don't use our creativity. That's our play side. That's our, and I just like,
mm,
oh, this is perfect, Damien. This is beautiful. Like how we need to bring together testosterone and estrogen, like
mm,
the male and the yin and yang. We need to bring together the left and right brain, the creativity and the logic. We need to bring them together. That's where innovation is. When we open up our brain and it's connected, then our brain is talking to itself. Oh, I wish I could remember the show that I just watched that really demonstrated how we have become so left brain. We're really like robots.
'Cause I love what you said there about play hard. That's awesome. I mean, and because that's what a little kid does to a degree, that's
Mm,
how they learn to walk. They're playing. Because I
yeah.
always I find it fascinating, that we've all heard the statement, "Work smarter, not harder." Yet from my experience around people, very few work smarter. They're just doing the same hard work over and over again.
For longer hours.
Well, yeah. I have that. I mean, because I mentioned about having finance. I look at that. I don't spend a lot of time in there, but get massive amount of profit out of it, with the private equity fund that I run. But I look at it and I use that as an example. Go, oh, it's so hard to do, and I go, well, I mean, George S. Carlson wrote a book nearly 100 years ago now called "The Richest Man in Babylon," and in there it gave 3 principles for having wealth: save a bit of what you earn, invest that, and reinvest the income. Now, that's a pretty simple instruction. I don't know how to make it much simpler, but
Mm,
it's not complicated. Yet, how many people do it? Is that
right.
that self-loathing again, not thinking you're worth it, or is it just where does that come in when we're not
It
working
often comes
smarter?
down, often when you whittle these things down, like, why do you feel that way? And then why do you feel that? What does that make you feel? When you whittle it down, it does often come down to worthiness.
Yeah. Is it
I
just
have no
the
idea.
repeating thoughts of this is when you say "I am," you mentioned about "I am," we're just repeating that same "I am this," whatever it is that your parents were, without even really thinking about what that is for you.
Yeah, exactly. Just accepting that, oh, must be
Mm.
true because they keep saying it. So I am that.
Is it a
And
case that, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, even like the thing about men and women. I was at a workshop and a young girl came up to me and she asked me if she could have a worm. And I said no. And she did one of these, she cocked her head like, please, please, she did. And I was like, what, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And she
Mm.
said, well, that works with my mom. Like this, like kind of cute. It was really cute, but I was like, I was freaked out. I was like, no, what are you doing? And don't ever do that again. And shame on your mom for letting you get away with things because you're so cute.
Yeah.
Like it was just so random. I was like, do I look like your mom? Am I your mom? Don't do that. No, you
Yeah.
can't get things by like doing a cute little flip with your leg.
Yeah.
Please. No,
Yeah.
you still no. um
I love the boundaries you just drew. It's fantastic. Boundaries are important.
yeah, it's another part is sensitive. I think that a lot of I've heard, and I don't know, I haven't back, I don't have any research on this, but I heard that all the children born in the 2000s are
Mm.
empaths. That
Right.
they're all super sensitive
Mm.
because we need sensitive entities that can feel
Mm.
because we haven't been feeling for too
Okay.
long now.
That's
So
interesting.
I'm one of those super sensitive entities. I was way before my time of
Yeah.
empaths, not empaths, but just like being. And
Yeah.
I used to be, I'd be bawling, always crying, like and told, grow a thicker skin,
Mm.
suck it up. The world's a harsh place. All of those, like how negative,
Yeah.
like how horrible, how scary is that to think, oh my gosh, and I don't fit in because I'm too wishy-washy, I'm too soft, and
Mm.
now again, another young girl came up to me and, something, and she said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sensitive. I'm too sensitive. I know. I gotta grow a thicker skin. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I was told. So I said, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Never say that again. I said, what does it? I said, what does it mean to be sensitive? Like, what does that mean?
Well,
And she said,
I'm more interested. I mean, what I'm interested in it from this is she's sorry for being sensitive, and that's coming back to anything that we have. Why are we sorry for being us?
that's it. That because we're not taught to accept that we are okay as we are,
Yeah.
that we're perfect. That we need all of us, all 8 billion of us. We're all little cogs in the whole scheme of things. We're all energy. We're all here. And I believe we're here to collaborate with each other,
Yeah,
not
because
be against.
it was like I mean, I had a number of people today email me and they apologized because they hadn't got back to me sooner, and I'm like, and I mentioned about the friend that I had that I haven't, he's been trying to call me for 2 days and then send me an email because I haven't answered my phone. I'm not going to write back and say I'm sorry I didn't answer the phone. I'm going to say, well, let's talk tomorrow. I was doing my
Mm,
stuff. I don't exist on the planet to be there at your beck and call. If I
mm,
had seen my phone, that'd be fine. But I mean, I don't have to apologize. It's not my job to be here when you ring. And that's
mm.
why, but I mean, I'd love to chat and I'll chat to you tomorrow. It's like, why do we
That's
feel
part
this
of
need
the,
to apologize all the time?
well,
I
you're
have that
talking
in
about,
the supermarket. You walk around a corner and someone will go, sorry. And it's like, you haven't done anything. You've walked around a corner. We haven't bumped into each other or anything.
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm in Canada, so we're probably we probably have the crown for the top
A lot of comedians
apologizers.
talk about that.
Yeah, sorry, but still, the
Yeah.
passive aggressive thing.
Yeah,
Sorry,
sorry,
I'm still
A.
going to hurt you. Bonk, I'm still going to hurt you, but sorry.
I love that. But what is this
Yeah,
sorry? What is it?
yeah, it's fascinating. I think today again, it's even more because there's so many ways to get in touch with people now. I don't have a cell phone, but I do have a
Mm,
landline. So if somebody calls me and leaves a message, if I don't get back, I open up my thing. There's an email from them. They've
mm,
messaged me on LinkedIn. They're on the Messenger, the little chatty box in Facebook. I'm like, pick a way to get in touch. Like, and you're right. I don't have a cell phone, so I'm not available. I think the premise today is everybody's walking around with a cell phone. So you need to how come they haven't answered my text right away? Like what I know they always have their phone. I know they have their phone. So then that gets that judgment, that whole, and then the energy that we're sending out. We are all energy. We're all connected by energy.
It was interesting from that perspective because I made a conscious choice to turn all my alerts off. Part of it was time management, and I think it's been 8 years now that it's, even on my emails, it doesn't have, you can have that thing that says it's so many unread messages, and so you can kind of see there, but I have that turned off as well. So unless I actually open the email app, I don't know if I've got an email, and I don't know how many are waiting. And there's certain times of the day that I look at it and deal with that. And I noticed.
Well, and that's a gift. I think that's training the people around you. That's teaching the people around you how you want to be approached. How to like that. I'm not available all the time. If you want to reach me, leave a message and I'll get back to you.
Well, so there's two components to that where the reason I did that. One was a time management thing, whereas I'm going to be doing this because if you're doing something, then you get interrupted and go back. We actually lose 20% of our day. Again, I don't know who does his research. Somebody did it, but 20% of your day, that's 1/5 of your day gone, wasted, that didn't need to be. And people talk about, I love when people say I'm back to back. It's like, well, yeah, you're obviously not managing yourself very well if you're doing that. So that was one reason. The other reason, though, when I put it in that context, was you cannot reach important people. Try and get on the phone to Warren Buffett or the Dalai Lama. Pick your important person. You're not going to be able to pick up the phone and reach them. They're busy doing what they're doing, and they'll answer you when they get to it. And so I went, I'm an important person. So I'm not going to just be reached at anyone's beck and call because I'm doing things, and to me, they're important things. And I don't have to justify that to them. Yeah.
I am important.
Well,
that's right.
I say I'm freaking awesome. That's what I say.
You are.
And I think everybody is. That's my thing.
Yes.
And that's what I wonder about when we look at the day, because that was a conscious thing. You mentioned about the day as well. Start the day. What do you think about? My day when I wake up, and it's a habit. I believe it's a habit. But then at the end of the day, when I go to bed, I look at it and go, not what didn't I do, but what did I do? What did I accomplish?
Absolutely.
And then I wake up
So it's just
remembering
reframing. It's reframing all the stuff because our brain is wired to negative. And we need to really be conscious about our thoughts and our thinking process and what are we spending our time ruminating on. Because if we're ruminating on the negative things and all the things that go wrong, and it's really not helpful. It's just keeping the same cycle going.
Is it a case where we just need to remind ourselves and that's maybe where gratitude comes in? Do we need to just remind ourselves, focus on the things that we have?
We do. Yeah. We need to spiral up. If you've ever been with a group of people and then someone starts oh, no, this thing happened. And then the other person's like, they can't wait to say how awful the thing that happened to them. They're like, oh, you think that's bad? Oh, la, 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 this. And then the other person, then everybody's like in this big downward spiral. Everyone feels like crap. But they've won the competition.
They stay there.
So they've won, right? Like, oh, my story was better. So I've got more dopamine going.
I've got the worst story. So it's like,
I've got the worst story. So I win.
Yeah,
I'm the victor. What?
It doesn't make sense, does it?
It doesn't make sense. So when I'm in a situation like that, I leave because I don't want to engage in. I say, can we spiral up? Can I talk about the great day that I had? Can I talk about this awesome conversation I had just now? I really do, and it is a conscious thing because.
Well, that's what is it a conscious thing until it becomes a habit?
Yes. Yes, I think so. We need to, it's changing the way that our brain has been wired for millennia.
Mm.
It's wired that way. It's wired for competition and wired for negative. I believe that it is. And so we need to just kind of rewire our brain, and we
Yeah.
can do it, but it takes
Yeah.
work. We got to change. And one of my mentors, she has an expression: nobody likes change except a wet baby.
I love that. That's awesome. I said there's two things people complain about: the way things are and change. So deal
you
with that.
know, like the expressions that we use, like pick your battles. Why do I have to pick a battle?
Exactly. So
You
I quote
know,
my mum again now. She says it takes two to tango. If one person's not arguing, you can't have an argument.
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many, and these expressions came from somewhere.
Mm.
They came from somewhere, and they were the truth at some point. And
Well,
then we just, yeah.
yeah. Well, I wonder about that because I mean, and I reference this a lot. So the long-time listeners are going to have to bear with me on this. But you mentioned about dopamine, but before they knew that dopamine existed, I mean, Walt Disney made the first feature-length animated movie, Snow White, while she's cleaning the house with the animals. She's singing Whistle While You Work.
Mhm.
And it's like, they didn't know dopamine happened then, but I know that from my own experience. I was doing this mind-numbing job when I was, it was for an IT company where they'd had a data download that didn't format correctly. So I went into a spreadsheet, but the columns weren't lined up. And there was tens
Ugh.
and tens and thousands of things that had to be sorted through. And I was one of, I think, 6 people doing this. And we had a 2-week contract to do that. And I think it took 3 weeks anyway. But I decided to make it a game. As Mary
Mhm.
Poppins said, in every job that must be done, there's an element of fun. Find the fun, the job's a game. And I decided to see how I could make this happen quicker, and just find ways of and I had a great time.
Mm.
Mind-numbingly boring, and I wouldn't go and do that for the rest of my life. But while I was there doing it, I made a choice that I was going to make it fun. And I'm just wondering from that perspective, is that something we can all do every day and go, I can make this day fun.
Wow, that's fascinating, because I wonder, as you were saying that, I was like, I wonder if some brains are wired that way, because I would do the same thing.
Mm,
I would have boring jobs, and I would make it fun. I would have a competition. I was a secretary, so could I
yeah,
type faster? How
yeah,
fast can I type? And
yeah,
and even in school, when we had the typing contest, or not contest, but to gauge how many words per minute we could type.
yeah.
Like I would have competition with myself, like, oh, let
Mm.
me do better. And it was just like so great. And yeah, interesting.
'Cause that's what
Well, in
video
laughter
games are built
yoga,
upon.
in
Video
laughter
game.
yoga, one of the
Yeah.
things is, what household chore do you dislike? Okay, so
Mm,
we're going to do an activity around that. Like, say it's washing the windows. So then,
yeah,
okay, so we're going to wash the windows while we're laughing. And so we do that as an exercise in laughter yoga. But it's something you can do. Like, you're vacuuming and you don't like vacuuming. So now if you're laughing or you're singing or whistling, it
mm,
becomes a fun chore, and you're secreting the love drugs, versus
yeah.
like hating it, like, I hate the and then you're slogging away. It's changing your mind. I wonder if some people are wired different. I
Well,
wonder.
that's another question about whether, it's wired different, or it's a choice of how
Choice. Mm.
the we choose to think. Um, Again, the reticular activating system kicking in. Some people may have had an experience. Oh, this is what I wonder about, whether, because we know how the reticular activating system works. So I'm wondering whether people have a set of beliefs set up in a way where they just can't see it yet, and they haven't had enough pain to get in a position where they need to think differently yet.
It feels like there's a big segment of the population that are just coasting along. I
Mm,
think when 2020 hit, the people that were most affected were the ones that haven't done any work,
mm,
and their life was
mm.
grand. They had the good job, and the family, the kids, everything was great. And then 2020 hit, and everything came to a screeching halt and they hadn't done any work. So then it was like, who am I? And they weren't even comfortable with themselves, never mind with all the other people that they were stuck with in their house. So that's what it feels like. The people that were most affected were ones that had done no work. They were just coasting along in life, not like just living one. Like, I know we have to go one day at a time, but it's good to have some future idea.
Yeah, no, exactly. But what you're talking about, that future idea, is that part of that as well? Where, as you said, a lot of people were coasting because they hadn't really thought about the direction they're going in. They're just going off, what they'd been brought up with, as you mentioned about.
Yeah.
And is that
like work hard, and then in 30 years you get a gold watch. Like, what the heck do you need a watch for when you retire? What at 27, when my husband and I traveled in Africa and Asia, wow, it was so interesting what people said. Like, our friends, it was 89, and the interest rates were going up. They were double digits for mortgages. And the house prices were going up crazy every day, and our friends were buying. And they're like, if you guys go away right now, you're never going to buy a house. And it's like, we're never going to have this experience again. Like, whatever. And an accountant at the company I was working said to me, these are your prime earning years. You're never getting this money back again. I was like, what? I didn't even understand what he said. I mean, I did, but I was like, well, I'm probably never going to have the education that I'm going to have in 13, or I didn't know it was going to be 13 months traveling around the world. I'm never going to have that experience again. And then other people would be like, when I retire, I'm going to travel and I'm going to do all this stuff. It's like, I never thought about climate change and the world being different from 89 to today. Like, the places that we traveled are way different than they were 30 years ago. Not only that, you don't have the same desire. You don't have the same physical strength or stamina that you would have. Like, I don't think at 60 I want to travel the same way that I did when I was 27, with my 40-pound pack, hoofing it, staying in, $2 motels.
Yeah, I've done that. 5-star hotels is the way I travel now. That's not. I've done the camping thing. I was in the army, so I've been there and done that. It's like,
yeah. So it's just it's perspective. I think that people often don't think about their whole life. They just are going, like, they just can see one little chunk at a time, and they don't have the perspective to think beyond that. Like, if I change something now, it's the cumulative effect. I tell the kids, like, if you eat a chocolate bar every day, like one chocolate bar every once in a while, no big deal. But if you have one every single day, that buildup of all that sugar and all the junk it's gonna cause trouble down the road. It's the cumulative.
I wonder again, is it simply a case of what people grow up with? Because there was a study that was done, and they brought in people that it really, really excelled in life. Your Steven Spielbergs, those kind of people. And there was a huge number of people, I can't remember how many it was, and what they wanted to do was try and find a common factor that they all had that would be like a predictor of success, and whatever it was you determined success was, because there was a broad range of people from different backgrounds, but whatever that was deemed as success in that area, they studied those people. What they found, they went through so many variables, and they couldn't find anything that was similar. It was like, I think it was about 280 they got to, and it wasn't the same across there. And then what they found was, and usually it was the parent of the opposite sex. So if it was a girl that was successful, it was the father, and vice versa. But when the child was very, very young, up before the age of 5, if the child had said they wanted to do something, the parent had an unwavering belief in that child. So it said, I want to be an astronaut. They said, you're going to be the best astronaut ever. You're going to be, no, don't think, it was never, don't think about that, or have an alternate backup plan or whatever. It was, you're going to be the best at that. And what they looked at that research, because it wasn't about whether the child was going to be an astronaut or not, or whatever it was chosen. It was the parents' belief in their ability that they were setting that up so the child had this very strong belief that they could achieve whatever it is they set their mind to. And that's where I wonder from this perspective, and we link that back to the reticular activating system again, is it a case where some people have just so strongly been set up that they can't achieve, that their mind then, they've got that self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak, or that they filter out anything that goes against what they've been taught, so that they can't have that wake up and they go through what you were talking about, just, got to get the job and then I'll get the gold watch and then I'll go and travel, as opposed to going, well, I can do anything, and then being open to choosing.
Yeah, I think the belief that people have in you is powerful. There was I can't remember, the last name was Singer. Susie Singer maybe wrote a book about, she was a teacher.
Familiar.
Yeah. She wrote a book about, she was a teacher, and when she started, she got a class and they said, oh, this person was in this person's trouble, and they got the lowdown of how much trouble this person had caused, and nobody liked this student. All the teachers were afraid that child would end up in their class, but it's okay, Susie Singer got her. And she was really angry child, and so she would come in, she would be very disruptive, and the way that she approached it was saying, I see you, and I believe in you, and I know you got this, and over time, like, the behaviors continued. I don't know the exact story, it continued for a while, but she shifted because she believed so much in her ability. She was able to help her feel that she wasn't, because I think what happens, babies, we look at babies again, and little children, we're like, they're so cute, and, well, maybe not babies. Back to me earlier.
I think babies are cute.
Yeah, no, I do. Right, but we look at them, they're so innocent, and the little children, look at them, but those little children become adults, and then when they have behaviors, we're like, oh, look at that, and we're judging them rather than saying, oh, what happened to that little child that they became this adult? Like, what happened to them? Why were they pushed down so many times that they couldn't actually get back up again? Because nobody believed. If everyone's saying, oh, you're a bad kid, going back to the children, ones that maybe they have they learn differently. They have a neurodiverse brain. So they're learning in a different way. They don't fit in the box, which most children don't fit in the box of our education system.
They don't fit in the box, yeah.
Right, they don't. Like, some are, they squish us in, and we're all average. The ones that are excelling and the ones that don't learn the same way often are in the office. They're the disruptors. So they're like, oh, you're disrupting the status quo, so you got to go to the office, and then they get expelled, and then they're just like bad kids, and then their parents are mad because they got to go to another school, and so that poor child, it's just that they might learn different, or nobody's understood them. They haven't had. Maybe they have a really broken home and they're abused when they go home, so they're afraid at home, and then they come to school, maybe they're bullies because that's all they know. There's a lot of things that we need to look at to change what's going on. Yes, we need to be responsible, but we need to be given the tools so that we know that that's an option. We know that we can be in charge of our own. That's
always sharing this for as well, and I love the story you're talking about, the school and the children, because one of my favorite stories is about a young child in school where the mouse escaped from the mouse cage. If I've got the story right, it might have been slightly changed, and they said, well, you said to Stephen, you've got really good hearing. Can you find where the mouse is? And because Stephen had good hearing because he was blind.
Yes.
That Stephen ended up being Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
Yeah, and because he was encouraged about, that he could actually hear really well, that apparently that was the story that set him off to that, having that belief. So it's interesting.
I got goosebumps.
We've talked for a while and probably talked a bit longer than I was expecting to. I forgot to ask you at the start where you had to go, but if we were to sum up this, what this people, not just men, but men and women feeling a bit lost and out there. How would you sum it up, and what should people be looking for?
Oh, I think we need to just be gentler with ourselves. We need to be accepting of where we are and what is, and
Yeah.
go from here. And just, I think if we're feeling bad, we need to go help somebody. Because when we help somebody else, it lifts up, it really lifts us up. We can stay in our house and just be sad, or we can just go help somebody. And it can be just something as simple as smiling at somebody on the street, helping somebody with their bags, or holding a door. The art of door holding has been lost, and it's so wonderful when somebody holds the door and you're like, yeah, I feel special. Thank you for holding the door. So I would say, be kind to yourself, to others, look up, because when we're looking up, that's where we see opportunities. With our technology, we're looking down, and we actually have the physiology of depression when we're on our technology. Even if we're looking at something funny.
Good point. Yeah.
Right? So we're secreting the love drugs from the funny thing, but we're secreting cortisol and adrenaline, the depression chemicals, because we have the physiology of depression. Wow. There's a lot of problems. But there's a lot of solutions.
Well, it is. And you just,
It's
as you
hopeful.
said, look up,
Look up and stretch and just connect. I would say take up more space. If you're living life on the edge, you're not taking up enough space.
Yeah. I love that. Cathy, it's been so wonderful chatting to you on the show and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. Thank you very much for taking the time. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Damien. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being part of the Share.Care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes, for others and for you.